when are you assigned to do something in Libya, and what was your experience with Libya?
Yeah, sure. So it was in early January of 2012. I was contacted. I was given about a week's notice. They needed someone to come out to start capture operations in Libya. The interesting part is they had no approvals, legal approvals of any sort. So they asked me to come and actually make it happen because they knew I could probably steamroll the process. The funny part is I first went over to meet with the office and headquarters that worked Libya. I knew nothing about Libya. And they sat down with me and said, we're never going to give you approvals. You're not going to be even going on a capture operation, blah, blah, blah. You're not going to get drones. And I was like, well, that was a great meeting. And then I went overseas. I told the chief of station at the time when I arrived, he's like, well, we'll show them. And we did. Like, I think it was maybe a month later, we had a drone over the Capitol. And then we started a month later our capture operation. So
And
yeah, we got it running pretty quickly.
that was G-Man station chief, right? We won't say his whole name, but that was the good one. That was the job.
Yes.
That was we did have a
Still
really
friends with him. Great
yeah,
man.
yeah, we did have an actually really good station chief in Tripoli. He was an old jawbreaker, fucking Mujahideen days, but of course we lost him before the attack. I think things would have went a lot differently for us if he would have been there. Yeah, we would have
Yeah.
had fucking
I
Spectre
think
on
he
station.
left 5 days before the
Yeah.
attack occurred, and
Yeah.
he was so connected in the region. Like, we would have had every government sending people in, be the French, the Emiratis, the Italians. So yeah, that was a huge loss to us.
Yeah, it was timing's everything. I'll tell you what. But yeah, as we go and you're in Tripoli at the time, actually I wrote about, and I didn't put her name in the book, but when I wrote about the where two of the case officers got rolled up and me and Boone had to run out to help them. We were just coming back from Leptis Magna at the time, and you were in the car with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
And I jumped out of the car because you guys kept talking. It was actually you and Bob, and you
Was
were
it-
talking about it was you and Bob, and you were
oh,
like,
was it?
the whole drive, it was like a 45-minute drive, and we were like, oh, when we get there, we're gonna do this and we're gonna do that, and we're gonna shake these guys down. And they stopped the car, and I jumped out with my diplomatic passport, and I walked into the Libyans. I'm like, I'm American. Why do you have my friends?
And they wouldn't roll their damn windows down. I couldn't remember. I was like, I can't remember who it was.
Yeah.
But it was just the funnest the thing that I was like, I remember she jumped, I'm like, what the fuck is she doing? All right, well,
I
let's
can
go.
hear you guys yelling at me through the armored vehicle that I
was
jumped
like,
out of my
Jesus
own.
Christ. But they were so cool. It was, but yeah, I was like, Jesus Christ, here she goes again. All right, go out, get out. But during that time, which is in Tripoli, were you starting to see, and because that was our time in Tripoli, and then we headed off to Benghazi, were you starting to see the possibility of a consulate or an annex getting attacked, a U.S. facility getting attacked? What were you seeing, and what kind of report? Because you're privy to a lot more reports than me.
Right.
So what was the status? What was going on in the office? And were we just ignoring those possibilities, or were we just oblivious to it all and we weren't seeing it?
Sure. Well, yeah. Remember when I first went in, there wasn't even a Libyan intelligence service. They started like end of February, beginning of March. So even those first 2 months, terrorists were just pouring into Libya. They had no border control at all. Like, you couldn't scan at a passport and it go into a system. Like, it didn't exist. So the funny thing is, the US government was always sending us, hey, this terrorist is arriving in country, this terrorist is arriving in country, this terrorist is arriving. So we'd bring it over to like the prime minister, the minister of defense, right? And they would just stick it on a pile. They had no way to track these guys. They weren't even taking it serious, right? They didn't realize so many terrorists were pulling into their country. So yeah, I was very concerned about it at the time. We just didn't have the mechanisms in place to actually track and locate these guys. And then we ended up not knowing so much. Like, when we were in Benghazi, Tonto, like Al-Qaeda had already established a base there. They started at the end of 2011.
Well, I remember you had something that me and Boone went out to do some surveillance on. It's that we got in trouble for it. We came back and we saw what we thought was AQI because with the guy, and we went and told you, and then actually, do you remember that? Do you remember us coming back and Bob bitching?
Oh,
Tell a little bit, because so people believe me. We went out to a Rafala Sahate. It was supposed to be a Rafala Sahate camp. And she's the one that sent us out to it. She's like, hey, I think we've got go do surveillance on this. Or maybe she just wanted to get rid of us off the base because we were pestering. I don't know. But I remember we sat and we did see an AQI guy there. But yeah, about that incident in itself, because we're the ones that we were doing it for you. You were saying, hey, go check this out. And we did. what was that day like? And after we came back and told you what we found, what did Bob say? What was, I know what he said to us. He said, don't ever do that shit again. That's not what we're here for. Like,
Yeah. For some reason, Bob didn't want us to collect on terrorists in Benghazi. He only wanted us to collect on political reporting and some stupid thing called federalism. But yeah, so there was really no push. There was even some terrorists I tried to push to get case officers to go recruit, and it was just not happening in Benghazi. We just did not have the right leader there. So yeah, as you said, Bob pushes back on pretty much everything to go out and do anything. We actually have kind of even a section in the book of basically every time Bob didn't let GRS respond to security incidents involving Americans in town. I mean, it was just a constant problem with Bob. He just didn't have the experience. He had basically no counterterrorism experience. His only deployment ever was to one location in Afghanistan. He got sent home early for getting an asset killed and doing some weird money payoff scheme.
That's right.
So again,
I remember that.
This wasn't the A team, unfortunately. And what a lot of people don't realize is right after the Libyan revolution, for some reason, the US government thought Libya was safe. So they didn't declare it a war zone originally. So they couldn't staff it. So basically the CIA was staffing Benghazi mostly with like temporary people, but they were taking people who'd been sidelined. So like one case officer we had in Tripoli, he was sidelined for making up reports in Iraq. And one report actually almost led to a JSOC raid that they called off the last minute, which had no bad guy in the house. Another case officer in Tripoli, same thing, got in trouble for making up intelligence reports. That's how hard they had at times staffing Libya because it wasn't a war zone, so people basically weren't getting their pay. So we really did not have the best of the best in the country at the time, unfortunately.
And they can just make up an intel report.
Oh yeah. We actually bring up in the book an intel report made up about 3 or 4 days after the Benghazi attacks by a case officer in Tripoli about our attack.
Wow, it's unbelievable. That shows no oversight. I didn't know that. Do I know that case officer? You can tell me offline. I'm gonna go find that motherfucker. I told you.
It's she. You would have.
Oh, it's she. Yeah, I know. I know who that is.
You definitely know the other person in the meeting with her that assisted in the made up.
Yeah, it's hearts and minds. She's still, hearts and minds.
Yeah, but I do want to jump back to your incident with the Rafala al-Sahati camp.
Yeah, please.
The interesting part is, we've been doing an investigation now for about 8 years into the attackers. What we did not know at the time when we were in Benghazi, that the gentleman running Rafala al-Sahati, his name was Mohammed. We won't do last names for just the confusion of it all. So we used to meet with him. We met with him. Everyone knows he met with the State Department, a couple of days before the attacks. He's one of the guys that said, we can't ensure security anymore. He was actually the senior Al-Qaeda commander in Benghazi at the time. And then when you bring up AQI, you're correct. So the lead trainer for all the Al-Qaeda terrorist camps in Benghazi in 2012 was a well-known Al-Qaeda in Iraq terrorist. His name is Boubacar Hakim. He was finally killed several years ago in a drone strike. I want to say it was in Syria, but he'd been involved in like the French attacks, like Charlie Hebdo. So very well-known terrorist, but he was running all the Al-Qaeda training while we were there. So that's probably who you saw.
Wow. Yeah, I remember the hair on the back of my neck stood up with like, shit, that's a hardcore AQI guy right there.
Well, he's scary. He's scary looking as shit.
He did. So going, you're there. We're going on. Now, you actually were our targeter in Benghazi at the time. Tell people what happened. I mean, they moved you out. You went to Europe. Were you still monitoring what was going on there to us? And then when that night happened, so let's even get into that. What was the first time you heard that we were under attack and what was going on in your head?
Yeah, so I was supposed to only leave Benghazi for one day. I was flying up to Europe to have meetings about attackers in Eastern Libya. So I flew up to Europe, got to my hotel late. It was about maybe midnight in the country I was in. Maybe it was about 1 a.m. in Benghazi. So I actually called. I talked to Boone at the time, and he was actually on the roof. I didn't know that. So you guys had just had your first attack on the
Well, you called him? I didn't know that. I didn't know. Holy shit, I didn't know that. So
this is after the fourth attack of the night, but it's right after the first attack on the annex. So he picks up, he says, hey, all is safe. I'm just busy. And it's a little loud. And I was like, oh, those assholes are playing video games. And so I just like hung up the phone and went to bed, right?
Holy
So
shit.
so then I woke up about 5 in the morning and I have all these messages from my mom on my iPad. She luckily knew I left Benghazi, but she knew all you guys were there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I was like, oh my God. And so then I started calling through the Rolodex, and I think I called maybe 7 numbers, and then Tig answered. So
Oh,
Tig is the first one who told me about the attacks.
where were we in Germany at that time, or were we still in Tripoli hanging
No,
out?
you guys were it was 6 in the morning. You hadn't left,
Oh,
like
we
you
hadn't left.
hadn't
Yeah.
left Benghazi yet. Nope.
Holy shit. That is, yeah, you might have called my phone. I probably didn't even answer it.
Yeah, well, all the phones were dead.
Yeah, that was,
I'm surprised
yeah.
Tig was the only charged one.
And he was always going back down to take pisses, get water. He's probably charging his phone on his
Yeah.
flash stick. What were you getting any information at all from Tripoli, or from even RCOB, or even, or even I'd say his real name, even our RTO, our radio, big guy.
We weren't talking about your TL.
Yeah.
I because I had to focus my book on the attackers, I did cut out a lot of stuff about the COB and your TL, but even the little bits I left in there are not very good.
They didn't do anything. I mean, you're not telling. It's not like we're trying to knock them. They
I know.
didn't do anything.
It's just part of the story, right? I can only do so much.
It is.
But actually, this will be very surprising to you. So about 9 a.m., I went into the embassy in the country I was in. They did not know. They thought people were still looking for the ambassador. So that would be 10 a.m. in Benghazi. So,
Whoa.
which is super odd because some stuff was reported in the press. So, there was no information was shared. Even when I first got there, I told our deputy chief of station from Tripoli, who was with me on the trip, hey, we lost Ron and Bob, you need to fly back. And he's like, nah, I got dinner plans tonight. I'm just going to stay in town. That stayed in the book, don't worry.
Wow.
So I'm the one that told him. He had no idea we lost 2 CIA officers. And this is hours after we lost them.
Wow. And at 10 a.m., that's actually around the time I was looking, they brought the ambassador's body back, and I'd actually checked his body. I just wanted to make sure there was any, honestly, I wanted to make sure it was him, but I wanted to, I was honestly looking for bombs. I just didn't want any bombs in that bag with him. I remember looking at him. Wow. Holy shit. All right. So you're you're there. Are you fighting to get back? Or are you just coming back on a scheduled plane that when you're supposed to come back to Libya, or are you like, hey, I need to get on the first hop, get me on that plane to get back home?
So I still carried out the meetings. So I went and met with our liaison, and I carried out the meetings, and then I took the first plane out. That's like the next morning. So I kind of came back maybe like, I don't know, 12 or 15 hours earlier than my scheduled plan. Because actually on my way home, I was going to go hang out in Malta for a couple days and then come back to Libya. But anyway, so I flew straight into Tripoli, and then I got back to work basically investigating the attacks. And I stayed in Tripoli until the end of November.
No, and we had since left. Why? I have my own opinion.
You guys.
You did. I have my own opinions of why they flew us out early, just the contractors. My opinion was because they were flying Petraeus in, and they didn't want us to talk to him. They wanted to get their part of the story, the case officers, the staffers part of the story. That's my opinion on why we didn't stay there. I know our TL said, no, we just wanted to get you guys out of there. You'd been through a lot, but we had no idea Petraeus was coming in to get debriefed actually in Tripoli. You were there when he showed up, correct? Were you in Tripoli?
Well, I was there when Petraeus showed up, but Petraeus came in November. So
Okay.
I think they sent you guys out to sequester you so you couldn't tell the story. So because you guys couldn't talk to anyone for what, like 5 or 6 days?
It was a week. Yeah, it was a week.
Yeah, because like on day 7, I actually got a message from Tig, and he was like, hey, did that collection I did at the consulate the morning of the attacks yield anything? And I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? And he's like, oh yeah, I went over the consulate in the morning of September 11th and did a technical collection. And I was like, what? And I'm like, where is it? He's like, I gave it to Bob. So I go over to Bob. I'm like, Bob, did like Tig give you like a flash drive? And he's like, yeah, I didn't know what it was. So then I go, Tig, he says I know what it was. And Tig's like, I told him exactly what it was. So yeah, but that was, yeah, so it was about a week until Tig could ask me about it. That's the first time he was able to speak to me.
And did Bob ever tell you? I found a BlackBerry. I remember we used to do old BlackBerries. I found one at the chief's house during the attack when we were doing our searches. I wrote about it even in the book, but I gave it to gave it to Bob, said, hey, this might be something. Did you ever get a look at any of that? Did he ever say
No.
he had it? And I said, this is probably the ambassadors, because it looked like the one that I'd seen him carrying around. Granted, all the Blackberries looked the same, but it was near his room. It was back there. Nothing ever came of that. I think that thing just disappeared too. I don't think
Yeah,
anybody.
I never saw that. And even when FBI came, I met with them. Obviously, when they first came to country, I was kind of like the one helping them because CIA didn't really want them there. And we definitely never handed a BlackBerry over from what I can remember.
Okay. Wow. Oh, well, we're going, as you're going on and we're doing after the attack, I know you're worked a little bit more. When did the wheels start to fall off and they were like, okay, Sarah's not part of the Benghazi whitewash team within the agency? What, when did that happen? What was the first? And I know you don't put up with shit. How did that go? And when you started to feel it, what were you saying to him? Were you just being ostracized, or were you just trying to still help us get the truth out there because you knew we were getting fucked over, or
Yeah.
what was that like?
Well, it was really interesting. It kind of all happened. Well, I knew the first day that you guys weren't able to go because I flew into Tripoli and I came in late, and I was driven in and I started walking up like the main steps of the building in Tripoli where our skip was, and it's pure dark. And I hear a guy say, that asshole wouldn't let them go in Benghazi. And I was like looking around, and it was the team leader, your team leader from Tripoli.
Okay.
So he told me upon me arriving in Tripoli that Bob didn't let you guys go. So I knew immediately. But then obviously 7 days later, I talked to Tig, I talked to Boone, I started talking to you guys when you guys were allowed to speak to the public or human beings again. But around the same time, around day 7 is the day we got the video. So we got the consulate video and the annex video, and we were able to watch them. So we got the videos and we brought them into the GRS team room and started playing it. And we can see you guys sitting in the car. And so I turned to your team lead from Benghazi and I said, what the hell? Why are they like with their guns, with their equipment on, and that damn car's not moving? So we got in a little tiff then. And then
can you talk about what he said? Can you tell, or is that classified stuff you can't say?
No, I mean, we weren't in a classified room when we had the argument. So no, he basically said, oh no, Bob had us wait. We were waiting for 17 February to respond. But what a lot of people don't know, and you're going to be surprised by this because I don't think I've told you this. So when the attacks kicked off, Bob made his first phone call to Fawzi Boukhtif, who was the head of the 17th February. On that first phone call, he told Bob, I am not sending you any reinforcements tonight. I have nothing to send you.
That motherfucker.
Bob knew from the first phone call. So he spent the whole night lying to you guys that 17 February was responding. So he didn't have to send you there, even though he knew nobody was going to help. So I always tell people, screw the stand down. The issue is Bob lied to his security team, causing deadly delays. Also, it put you guys at risk because you kept interacting with terrorists and you're like, it's just 17 Feb. I don't want to shoot at a friendly. And you guys kept risking your lives when 17 Feb was never going to show up.
Wow. Who are those fucking little guys that followed me? Holy shit.
Yeah,
just two kids off the street. I just grabbed two kids off the fucking
street. My theory is the two that were with you and Boone were from a group called the Zawiya Martyrs Brigade. Okay. So they were, in later years, they're one of the militias who fought against the Islamists. So you did link up with two.
So basically we just got lucky. We just fucking got lucky.
Yeah.
Holy fuck. Sorry, I'm saying fuck a lot, but Jesus. I mean, it's 10 years. I didn't know that. So I mean, because that 30 minutes, he didn't say that one time, hey, these guys aren't coming. He never said it. And you know what? Why didn't our TL, which we can't name, which that piece of shit, why didn't he stand up for us? Why didn't he say, hey, why didn't he tell us? He should have been telling us. That's his job. He's in charge of us. That's
they led you on all night long that you're going to get some backup support. They even led you on that U.S. military was sending backup support, and they knew that wasn't coming either.
Oh, yeah, because
you guys just played as fools all night long by your own bosses, which is pretty depressing.
Well, and that honestly, that doesn't shock me with how the agency was going. I mean, I could see the difference from 2006 to 2012. You saw the old guys, the jawbreaker guys, the military guys that were case officers, guys like, I think he's retired now. So hopefully, isn't Sandman? Great guy. Love that guy. Former military, tremendous, but he was retiring. All those guys were leaving and we're getting these kids that could make up shit. Like you said, they could make up fucking reports and it would be okay. They could make up intelligence. They could Well, so with that, the attackers, let's get, because the book in your book, and
Right.
who co-wrote the book with you? Who
So
co-wrote?
Boone did. So Dave
Yeah,
Boone
Boone.
did. And so you're a little sidekick all night.
Yeah, and Boone is, dude, he's as far as an operator goes, he's tremendous. And that was one of the reasons of also why I think people should read it, because adding his name to it, Sarah, I know your integrity is fucking golden, but people don't really know you as far as they will now. They're going to start to, but having Boone on there does help, because Boone was there, and Boone, as far as operators goes, he's top notch. He's tremendous. He did a tremendous job that night, and having him there, I knew when you said, yeah, he's part of it. Like, well, fuck, this is spot on. It's going to be spot on book. I know Sarah, but I also know Boone, and Boone's not going to let Sarah, not that she would, but it's not going to go, and we're not going to be overzealous and make it and fabricate shit. So that's huge having him on the book. It really is. It is.
Yeah. And honestly, the only reason the book is done because of Boone, like, I'm the expert, right? But I kept giving up on it, right? I was like, nobody cares. We're going to find these attackers. Nobody's going to do anything. And he just kept saying, just do it. Just knock it out. Just like suck it up. If you don't do it, nobody's going to do it. And he's right. We're 10 years later. If I hadn't done like my list of attackers, the US government doesn't have, it wouldn't have been done if I didn't do it. So I'm happy he prodded me along the way. He was really a pain in the ass. I wanted to delete his name 1,000 times, but he is the reason it got done.
No, and it's great having him on there. He's even just not the attackers. Like I said earlier, before you came on, I'm going to find out stuff I didn't even know. The stuff like you just said with Bob, not knowing and not telling us. Nobody knows that. This is the first time outside of maybe the inner circle of the agency that people are going to hear that, and that's fucking huge. Because you're right. It put us at some dire straits. We may have handled ourselves. We would have handled ourselves a lot differently, tactically speaking, if we knew that, hey, we really don't know 17 February, anybody's coming. We would have done things different. It may have been better. It may have been worse, but we at least should know. You got to have all the information during a combat operation or a security operation, because it dictates how you're going to use your tactics. And like I said, with those two guys we got, I may not even have asked them. I may have pointed my gun and said, get the fuck out of here. But luckily for us, they were friendlies, and we just got fucking lucky.
And another really good example from me watching the security surveillance is when, just after midnight, when those attackers started forming outside of the annex, you guys weren't sure they were 17th Fed. Yeah. I mean, if you would have known 17th Fed wasn't responding, you could have engaged them immediately instead of letting them coalesce together.
Dude, we did. We waited. It was basically wait till you see the whites of their eyes. It was like Revolutionary War shit. It was like, don't shoot, don't shoot, don't shoot. We have no idea. So that I don't think civilians within the agency that don't know anything about military or tactics, they realize those little things obviously cost lives. They and they put you on your heels. So instead of you being the aggressor and having the initiative, now it gives the enemy the initiative, and that's what you want to have the set off on the good foot and win the fight. You want the initiative. You want the advantage right off the bat. And we were always at a disadvantage because we were always getting, and now I know it, because we're always getting bad poop. We're getting bad info. They're not fucking telling us. Well, as the night went on, as there, and I want to keep a lot of it in the book so people buy your book, and they need to read it. They definitely need to read it. Before we get into the attackers, was there anything else that night that maybe I don't know or that we wouldn't know that was in there aside from the attackers? And I want to know where the attackers were from, what militias they were friendlies with, and so forth. But other than that, what else? One more thing, and then that's it. Don't give up your book. I don't want
Okay, one more thing. Well, this was in the Benghazi report, so you know this, but a lot of people, besides I think you and my mom, I think Teague read a few pages and gave up on it, but you and my mom read the Benghazi report. I know Boone did, and this is the only human I know. So, but in the Benghazi report, we make it very clear that the force that actually came at the end of the night and brought you guys to the airport was Gaddafi loyalists. It was an underground military intelligence unit in Benghazi we had no relationship with. So that's something a lot of people they think some allied militia came and got us. It's like, no, Gaddafi's people like brought us out, and like that's sad that we had to rely on Gaddafi's people.
It's completely ironic, and it shows the irony of war that you got saved by your enemy. You were that's what I tell people, and I read it, so I saw it in there. I put it in when I talk my public speeches. I put that in there because first, I think it's fucking ironic as hell, but
Mhm.
people need to know it. It's like, dude, we were saved by Omar Gaddafi. I mean, literally, we were saved by the guy that we were trying to kill. If that doesn't show you how fucked up the agency is and fucked up war is sometimes, I don't know what does. But again, lucky, we got lucky. And
Yeah.
sometimes luck is what you need.
And remember the private plane that brought Team Tripoli, so your GRS team from Tripoli, Gaddafi loyalist plane.
Gaddafi Low is
So-
playing oil tight. He's got money.
Yeah.
Where did you start to find, gather the info on the terrorists that came in, and was it just Ansar Sharia and AQIM, or were there other militias, friendly, as McCain would say, friendly militias that came in, or friendly terrorists that came in to help us?
Sure. Well, when we started, our focus was we wanted to prove to the world this is an Al-Qaeda attack. So we started focusing on the Al-Qaeda attackers at the consulate.
Okay.
One of the things that's really interesting is FBI released about 30 photos of the attackers.
Yeah.
We know there was about 80 faces in the video, right? But there's about 150 attackers in the area. Of those 30 photos, there is not one Al-Qaeda guy in the photos.
Why?
But exactly. So we said, screw the photos they released. We're starting from scratch. We're not going to use any of their information, and we're just going to do our own investigation. And so, yes, it was an Al-Qaeda directed attack. It was directed by the now late Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri. So yay, CIA for taking him out in Kabul.
I didn't know that. I had no. Zawahiri did art.
Yeah,
Man,
he directed the attack, and he actually had all these old networks. So you'll see in our book, there's a lot of guys who were in the the Egyptian Islamic Jihad. That was the group he was in charge of before Al-Qaeda. You'll see a lot of the senior leaders now, right? Because it's been so many years. The senior leaders who sent fighters fought in Afghanistan. You'll see a lot of the attackers who fought in Algeria with Al-Qaeda. As you said, AQIM had a lot of attackers, well over 40 AQIM members alone were involved in this attack. So basically the main mastermind for the consulate is Muqtada Mukhtar. Okay. Everyone knows him, one-eyed Marlboro guy. Every year we kill him in a strike. He finally died in like 2016, super famous, fought in Afghanistan. So he was actually the mastermind who set up the whole kidnapping plot to go get the ambassador. So
there you go. And that's so I tell people with the attacks that I don't know if he was going to get kidnapped or not. But that being said, I said, by how they did it, they could have rolled us up at, honestly, they had so many guys there, they could have rolled us up at any time. And they were trying to kidnap him, or they were trying to kidnap somebody. Do you think he was a high value target, of course, but once they figured out that, and they pulled him out and he was dead, and maybe you have more information, I thought he was dead from the smoke inhalation. I didn't think he was dead when he got to the hospital.
So yeah, I talked to the person who pulled him out actually, and he yeah, so he was deceased when they pulled him out. So they were confused, so when they came out of the building with him, they set him on the ground, and then everyone kind of cheered because they saved an American, but they really wasn't logical to them yet. Oh, this is actually a deceased American. So that's why in the video they're all like, Allah Akbar, because they think, oh my God, we saved this man. Then, they start walking away. The neighbor who knows him sees them with the ambassadors, like, put him in my car. He actually brought him to the Benghazi Medical Center. So luckily he was transported by a friendly too. And then, they tried to revive him. He was well past dead, even when they carried him out of the building, unfortunately.
And I didn't see any marks that would indicate he was desecrated. I didn't check his genitalia. I know that was a big conspiracy. I don't think anything like that happened.
What happened, and there's a medical report. Yeah, nothing. The ambassador didn't have a bruise on his body. What happened is, he just passed out in a room next to a bed, and there was just nosy locals walking around in the house, and one kind of like tripped over him, and he's like, oh my God. He runs out, and then he gets actually a Libyan army officer who was there that was nosy, right? Someone said there's an attack on the Benghazi University, and then it ended up being the consul. He's like, I didn't even know you guys had a consul. I'm like, nobody does. So he then pulled him in. He's like, you're an official? Come, there's a man in here. And then they carried him out. So he never even interacted with the terrorists, luckily.
And so that's the picture of them, the iconic picture of him being drug out in his white t-shirt.
Yes.
Wow. Did we not know? Did we have no idea we had that many terrorists? Did Bob not care? Did he not want to? I know he didn't want to listen to, obviously, with the interaction that we had where me and Boone did our surveillance, told you, and then we got reprimanded. What was the mentality? What was the instate of us not wanting to know there were terrorists, or just saying, there's nothing to see here, I'm just going to do this?
Yeah, I think there's multiple policy failures. One is the fact that basically, you know how the CIA works. You collect intelligence to report it to somebody, usually Congress or policymakers. Most people at the time only cared about the politics of Libya, and so that's what they're asking for. So CIA had Libya staffed with political case officers. In Benghazi, we only had one, as you know him, we only had one counterterrorism case officer in Benghazi. We only had, I think the only counterterrorism case officer when we were in Tripoli together was the COS.
Yeah.
Because when I went out there, we were the only two. We were like a two-man team. And we'd always piss off everybody else. They're like, why are you two all together? I'm like, because none of you know what to do with CT. So yeah, so the bodies weren't even there to collect the info, even if we wanted to.
And I was looking at that at the time, if you don't remember the political statement from Barack Obama. He was running on the platform, Al-Qaeda was on the run. And obviously it wasn't. I still think that has a lot to do with us not getting the support we needed. And I think that's a lot to do with not having the proper people out there to collect counterterrorism intelligence, do CT work, is because Al-Qaeda wasn't supposed to exist anymore. And from what you know, and obviously from what I know, but I think you're the foremost expert on it, because that's what you did. You tracked these people. We saw that Al-Qaeda was extremely alive and well, and to hear that Zawahiri actually coordinated our attack, that tells me Al-Qaeda was fucking still rocking, because holy shit, that's unbelievable. I didn't know that.
And he was going to get Al-Qaeda members released for the ambassador, and then it was going to be in honor of Abu Yahya.
So is that what it was for, the kidnap, to do to do a trade-off of the Gitmo guys, right? Those 8.
No, it wasn't going to be the Gitmo guys, actually. So it's really interesting. Okay. You know, at the beginning of the Arab Spring, a ton of prisoners got released, be it Tunisia, Libya, Egypt. Wait till you see our book. Almost every guy in our book, I swear to God, was detained somewhere prior to the attacks, and were supposed to be in prison when they committed the attack. So they then almost became obsessed, right? Like, hey, we now got to go back and get the guys that got left behind. So yeah, one of the key terrorists, I mean, a lot of people won't know him. I never worked Al-Qaeda in Iraq, but one of the key terrorists, his brother was the lead commander who led the attack on the ground that night. He was actually on death row in Iraq. So he was one of the people they were going to ask for, you know, to get him released. Another key terrorist they asked for, and we're going to ask for, he was in Jordan. He was detained for being involved in an airport plot there. Again, another Al-Qaeda Iraq guy. 2 years later, the same Benghazi guys kidnapped the Jordanian ambassador in Tripoli. Basically, a Benghazi attacker from our consulate kidnapped him. The base that he masterminded the mortar attack, transported him to Benghazi, and then another Benghazi attacker held him hostage in his house. So all of our attackers were involved. They then got that AQI guy released. Interestingly, he now leads our attackers basically at a refugee camp outside Tripoli. So he's still in the game. He's still linked to our Benghazi attackers, and they're still like unabated.
Wow, that's unbelievable. With moving on, I know I want to save your book. As we get through Benghazi and we do this, you get back to the agency, you get back to headquarters. At one point, did you see that this was we were starting to get rolled a little bit? They were going to basically turn on us. They weren't going to support us. The heads, there are people within the office that did. It was a faction, complete fact. There were guys that did, and there were guys that didn't. But when you saw that, I believe, didn't you also write a letter or something that, or can we not talk about?
No,
can we talk about that? I thought you wrote a letter.
It's out of my book, so this is raw content for all. But yeah, so it actually happened while I was still in Tripoli. So like I said, General Petraeus came out to Tripoli in November. He came out, gave us a speech. A few people in Benghazi got upset because they realized, oh, he actually doesn't know what has happened.
Wait. He didn't know what? He didn't know what? Petraeus didn't know what happened to Benghazi when he came in?
He did not know about the delay and those type of things. There's reasons why he doesn't know about the delay. It's actually not his fault. So when the Benghazi attacks happened, Bob forgot to call CIA headquarters and report an attack. So he waited 30 minutes into the attack, and then the communications officer in Benghazi is like, "Hey, Bob, you need to call CIA and send attack's going on." And he's like, "Oh yeah." So Bob then called.
Can I just say, it's so crazy? I feel like anybody who watched 13 Hours or read the book was like, wow, this Bob guy seems really incompetent.
Oh,
And then they're going to listen
good.
to this interview, and it's like they made him look better than he was.
All right, that's what I tell people. I said we made him look better than he actually was.
I get so mad how good they made him look in 13 Hours. You
we
have
did.
no idea.
We did. Wait. So I can't. I'm not going to say his name, but big former Vietnam guy, radio operator guy. I don't say it's because I think I told him I would never put his name out there. But
so he's the one that told Bob, "Hey, you never reported it."
Wow.
So he actually it was Bob who called chief of station. The communications guy called headquarters. The interesting thing is, like I told you, this is 30 minutes in. So then when headquarters said, "Oh my God, an attack's happening, did you send a response?" He said yes.
Holy shit, that motherfucker.
You guys are gone, but it was factual at the time. So that's then what General Petraeus got, right? Hey, an attack just happened in Benghazi. CIA sent a team from Benghazi. CIA sending a team from Tripoli. So to the director of CIA, he's like, yeah, good. My people are doing what my people do. Okay. So he did not know until this incident. So he says that I basically write a little note to his chief of staff, hand it off to him. And then that night I wrote an official IG complaint, because I honestly did not know until that point that the director didn't know you guys were delayed. When I found out our own director was lied to, I was like, this is enough. And that's when I stepped up. So yeah, I wrote an IG complaint on, I think it was maybe a Thursday night or a Friday night. I got a pretty immediate response from
what
was positive response. He said, "I appreciate you sending this to me. I'm actually going to send a team out to investigate this personally." And then by the next week, he was out as the director of the CIA, and it never happened.
Right.
So
do you think that's just a coincidence, or do you think that they had it on him and they were saving that force? So if he ever stepped out of line of the status quo, politicians, most of them were Obama zealots at that time anyway.
I would have no insight into I mean, you know what I mean? I could guess, but
it just seems like a heck of
people, right?
Like, I know you didn't hang out with them. I just like, man, that's heck of a coincidence that he's going to actually help us. And all of a sudden, oh my gosh, he's cheating on he's having an affair. And I hate to say it to y'all, agency, 99% of you fucks are having affairs. So
yes,
jeez.
And I worked in Congress. 99% of them are having affairs.
So I know we're going long, and Ian, step in whenever, brother. But
no, this is explosive because of the fact that this is an interview where you're learning new things and you were there. I mean, so I think this audience are a lot of people who have read 13 Hours. They watched 13 Hours and they felt like they knew everything there was to know about the attack. And 10 years later, even Chris is learning new things. Yeah,
it's unbelievable. I'd love you just to go page to page on your book. You're sending me a copy, right? I get a fucking copy of the book.
Yeah, the problem is you would have a copy today. The CIA has completely approved my book, but because now I'm a DOD employee, DOD still has it. So like you guys got stuck waiting on DOD. I'm still stuck waiting on DOD. So I can't release my book until I get the DOD approval back. So I'm kind of in a purgatory right now, unfortunately. The book's ready to go. We wanted it out by 9/11. We're hoping DOD steps up, does their part, gets it up for us by 9/11. But
no,
I would think that it's just, and I could be wrong. Do you think that's a little too hopeful that it'll be out by 9/11? We're recording this on the 1st of September, and there's no pre-order link anywhere. There's no, we don't even know what the cover looks like, right?
Well, I actually made the cover. So the funny thing is we were told that we would have the DOD approval by the beginning of last week. So we had everything in place to kind of move it forward last week. So now, like I said, we're kind of in a limbo. But Boone and I decided to actually self-publish. So we don't actually have to worry about the politics of Benghazi. We don't have to get any publisher's opinion. We are just going to put the book out on our own as is and give people the raw content.
Oh my goodness. And so now you have a clearance lawyer, you're doing all that to get it through with the DOD. So you've done it.
Same lawyer you use. Like I said, CIA is approved. It's just the DOD, which is super strange, right? Because it's only because I'm employed there. We know there's not much really DOD guns.
Yeah.
Really. People in Benghazi, let alone they didn't respond. So yeah, it's actually kind of fun.
Do you have anything? Do you have any? Well, it's funny. It's funny as in just ludicrous. It's it's ridiculous funny.
Suffered through it many times.
Do you have anything in the book about the DoD response? Did you know anything? I know it's completely separate, but did you know anything about and why the lack thereof of there being a response, even though they knew what was? I trust our communications officer that was in there. I trust. He's one of the guys. I love him to death. Big old teddy bear. He knew what the fuck he was doing. He said he made the calls to everybody. And when I said everybody, it was also DOD. Do you have anything in there, or did you find anything of why they didn't send a response team or any? I know they were prepositioning people. They were, but that stopped.
Couple of pieces. So there's two main pieces. So there was one thing asked for by the CIA. It was the medevac. Actually, around midnight, your own team lead in Benghazi called that off, said we don't need a medevac. So that's your own fault. The other thing
is the Benghazi team lead, not the Tripoli
team lead.
The jackass, not the one that actually knew what the. I remember the other team lead in Tripoli.
We all know the team lead in Tripoli was top notch.
He was good.
Your team lead.
Yeah, he was good.
Yeah, I can only say positive about the Tripoli team lead.
Did he say why? Did you get anything of what the fuck?
Yeah, well, he basically told kind of your deputy team lead in Tripoli, call it off. We're not going to need it, and then he called it off. So that's why there was no medevac. Then, kind of an hour after that, there was this crappy post on Facebook from something called like the Tripoli Military Council. It wasn't even a legit site. Nobody was tracking it, saying there was going to be an attack on the U.S. Embassy in Tripoli. From that point on, nobody even knew attacks were still ongoing in Benghazi. They shifted every focus to Tripoli. So at 5 a.m. Benghazi time, when DOD put the order out to send, I don't know if you've ever read it, but when they put the order out to send resources, I don't know if you've seen, it only sends resources to Tripoli. No. The word Benghazi is not in the order anywhere. And remember, you guys still have another attack coming. So this is even prior to the mortar strike. So yeah, they lost focus off of a Facebook post. It's kind of embarrassing.
That was the Mike Morrell analyst he trusted his analyst, where he came on and when Morrell was the deputy. And he said, there was a Facebook post that came out. We trusted our analysts and the Facebook. I remember hearing him say that.
The CIA, the DOD, like, it's just like, everyone cared. And the funny thing is they moved all those people from the U.S. Embassy in Tripoli to our CIA annex anyway. It was like an empty building. But yeah, they cared more about protecting an empty building in Tripoli than to go in and help the people where ongoing attacks were occurring.
What in the fuck? I swear
I call it a shit show.
It was complete shit show. Well, we're moving, and we'll get into a little bit. And we might want to have you come back on too to talk about, because your story about being on the Benghazi Select Committees is a story within itself too. I remember you were banging your head against the wall and just to get on it. And then when Trey Gowdy brought you on, you saw a lot of shit that a lot of people didn't see in those rooms. And only I saw.
Dramatic when I first came on. Like, it was
huge.
I had to go and be debriefed myself before they let me. They went to the CIA and tried to get me removed. Yeah, it was a lot of drama. There's a lot of mess in Congress. People don't always just want to do their job right, but Trey did, and so that's why I stuck it out and went through all that mess up there, because I knew he wanted to do a good job.
And do you think just overall that committee, without getting into details, that he was actually trying to find, not, I know he's a Republican and I know he's got allegiance, they all do, they say they don't, but do you think he was actually trying to get the truth and not just get, hey, what we can do to help the right win elections and make sure that Hillary's not president, which she did that to herself with what happened. But do you think it really was the integrity? He just wanted to find out what was going on, or was it a complete, hey, right versus left sort of thing going on?
Sure. I actually have a really good example of that. But first, I was there for 2 years. I don't think I heard Trey Gowdy once say the name Hillary Clinton. That's how much she was on the back burner. I know people were briefing him like, hey, we got some of her emails, we're reading through them, we're looking what staff was doing, decisions that were being made. A lot of people were talking about Patrick Kennedy and Charlene Lamb. Like, their names are those around talking about Hillary Clinton. Yeah, those two
should rot in hell.
But here's the example that I always give everybody. So, I'm pretty apolitical, as you know, but when I actually got asked on the Benghazi committee, I had been a 20-year Democrat. He didn't care I was a Democrat, right? So he took a Democrat onto his Republican committee. it was actually my time in Congress that made me leave the Democratic Party because they were so horrible to me. But yeah, he didn't give a damn. He's just like, hey, I want your knowledge. You seem to know the most about this. Like, that's what I need on my committee. So I think just that's proof alone. Like, he brought a Dem in.
Should he have done more in his report? Should he have? I mean, he did have a lot of information, but he didn't. But he wasn't supposed to find a guilty or innocent verdict. He's just supposed to write the report, and then the assistant, then what the attorney general, the little guy, what the fuck was his name? The little guy from Alabama. He was supposed to actually action that. He was supposed to do things. What do you think on that? As far as
I think, Congress only has so many carrots and sticks. Really what you want Congress to do is go fix broken programs, get funding to the people who need funding. So obviously one of the things we did push, right, is getting state to increase their training again. But, at the end of the day, there are some state officers that obviously, as we just said their names, they should have been fired from the US government. That actually really wasn't Congress's role, right? The Department of State should have stepped in and said, hey, here's all this evidence in front of us. Like, we need to can them. They can't can a Kennedy, right? So unfortunately, it's a broken system. I think the committee did what the committee can do, but it did teach me Congress has limits. Congress doesn't really have much power. It's unfortunate. And, it's an ongoing issue.
Wow. That's amazing. I know I could talk to Sarah for like 2 hours about this, but again,
I could listen to it all. There's so much.
Holy
here.
Shit. This is we are breaking news. Fuck you, Fox and CNN. We are breaking news here on the Battle Line.